You cannot import massive amounts of people, so graph go up.
The look on his face too. Oh my god, that shit is too fucking funny.
Graph go up. And
I mean, oh my god, that has to be the funniest fucking thing he's ever said, right? I mean, like, it's gotta be. I don't know why I find that so fucking funny.
That I don't think we should have more mass Muslim immigration into the United States, but I do think we should have far more hardworking, industrious people from India, from South America.
No, not based. Not based.
Brad, I want to hear your opinion, because all I'm getting from this, this is the first time I'm seeing this, right? So if I'm a normie and I'm like looking at this, which I am here, you see Tim Pool said, I effing despise free trade. So obviously there's like a statement about a certain, subject, right? So free trade, he doesn't like it. And he has a reason why. It extracted American jobs, it gutted our culture. So the idea is that, the economy, it's giving our jobs overseas, and essentially with that, right, you're seeing the degradation like we saw with the iron and steel mills and whatnot going on in the Midwest, where eventually if you lose these jobs, you lose blue collar workers. If you lose that, you lose cities, you lose towns, you lose a huge part of what makes America, right? Where we're just a country of people who get 4-year degrees and work, entry-level jobs typing on Excel spreadsheets. You lose a lot of what's going on. Plus, including, like he said, with the skateboards, you actually even lose quality. This actually changes entire industries, etc. And then you said, tell me you don't understand economics without telling me. I don't understand economics. Tell me why he's wrong.
Well, because free trade has been one of the most profound forces for human development and poverty relief since 1980. If you look at the expansion of free trade globally, the drops in levels of absolute poverty have been astounding. Economists who study this view it as almost miraculous, the growth and decrease in human poverty and suffering we've seen, in part because of the expansion of global trade. The living standards enabled in the United States by free trade, where everyone is walking around with supercomputers in their pockets, where people have access to a life that even 50 or 100 years ago, the richest people's lives compared to the poorest people's today you'd rather be a poor person today than the richest person than be Rockefeller in the early 20th century. The living standards that are enabled by this are phenomenal. The improvements in human progress are...
It's actually kind of funny, because that argument sort of reminds me of what conservatives say about poor people in America. They're like, yeah, but 95% of poor people in America have a flat screen TV. It's like 99% of them have a refrigerator. Or something like that. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So they shouldn't care about living paycheck to paycheck, hand to mouth, that kind of thing. It's kind of a dumb argument.
Are miraculous, and you can't actually put that genie back in the bottle. Attempts to undo it, really, you can't undo progress. A lot of what you're mad about here is progress, not trade.
So the points that you're making are I'm 100% on board with all the stuff you're saying, and that's where my libertarian foundation comes through. It is true that without that trade and markets lift people out of poverty. The reason why poverty is almost been totally wiped out globally, except for very, very few areas, is because of free trade and because of trade and markets and stuff. So, and
it's mostly because of technological advances, though. It's not really because America didn't have tariffs or whatever, has these trade relationships with other countries. This is kind of dumb.
The number of unnecessary deaths in a society goes down correspondingly with the wealth of that society. So like there's a meme that we talk about, like number go up so it's good, right? And chart go up or whatever. And that's a meme, and it's
there's also truth to it.
Exactly. That there is a kernel of truth, and maybe even more than a kernel of truth, that rich societies do not have as much unnecessary death as poor societies, and they don't have as much unnecessary violence. They're always more peaceful. They're more collaborative societies. You end up with a better result when you're dealing with rich societies. And I'm sure that there are any number of ways that you can dissect these things, but the idea that having a rich society is not preferable to having a poorer society, that's just not right.
Who the fuck said that, dude? Okay, can this boomer guy not interject with his dumb opinions, please?
Restrictions on trade make us poor, and they block progress.
So that's your opinion. You'd have to prove that. That's your argument. You have to prove the argument.
What it sounds to me like is the wealth of the United States in terms of our actual resources and our actual cultural development must be sacrificed to increase poverty in China. To decrease poverty in China.
No, the living standards of the U.S. should not be compromised so that certain things can be made here more expensively and less efficiently rather than be made overseas.
Less efficiently?
Yeah,
That's a cultural
less
problem.
efficiently.
I have
That's a
something to
cultural
say.
problem.
By the way, I'm glad we're talking about this because an ancient historian and also a philosopher named Jaden Smith once said, well, all my friends are around, just talking about whatever. We're here to talk about the economic and political state of the world, right? That is a very, very serious thing. Thank you, Jaden Smith, for always reminding us to keep focused on what's very serious. He's my hero, and he's one of the best influencers in the world. But the Smith family aside, look, I call this the
I don't get the reference. Is that supposed to be a joke?
Walmart dilemma, and I'm going to explain to you why I actually agree with the fact that free trade, as he would call it, or unrestricted free trade, is diabolical. So I went to go buy a PlayStation 5. Yes, I'm a dad of 2 kids. Yes, I don't have a lot of time to play it, but I wanted to try it because I needed to play GTA 5 and shoot some cops in the video game. That's apparently what Elon Musk thinks I bought it
GTA 5, bro. That came out like 15 fucking years ago. What are you talking about, bro?
for. I wanted
6 is the one that's coming up soon. Stupid. Maybe that's what he meant to say. I don't know.
to have a little bit of fun. I wanted to feel like what it was like. African-American free culture. It was cool. I like it. It's fun. And so I went to go buy one. And I looked and there's only a few places I could get one in a very densely populated region like Boca Raton. This is right between Miami and West Palm. There's 3 places that I could physically get one. It was Walmart, Target, and GameStop. These are large corporations, right? There's no mom and pop shops. There's no video game stores selling PlayStations. This is a commodity that people want, and it's only there. Now, if I want to go...
Now, you can go and get it on the internet, though.
Online, the same thing. It was Walmart, it was Amazon, or it was like, these foreign sites that you could get, which are also large corporations.
You could probably buy it from most electronic stores online. And I think you can buy it from Sony itself. What is your point? Where are we going with this?
Have it delivered the next day to your place.
Well, yes. Wait. So this is great, right? So look, I'm not complaining about the access to this. So I go to Walmart, which I try not to do. I brought my gun with me whenever I go into that place, allegedly, because they have those signs on the door, so I wouldn't do it. But I go to walk in. I walk in the back, and I asked the guy for a PlayStation 5. He says, "Here you go," and it says $374 on it. It's got a sticker that says $374. It's a great deal. We go up to the counter, and he hasn't really said a word, and he checks me out. Checks out the PlayStation. He wasn't into me. Haitian immigrants, apparently I'm not their type. So he checks out the PlayStation. I like to think, right? I'm beautiful to a Haitian boat guy. But he checks it out, and it's like $484. It's literally $110 more expensive. And I stand there and I go, "Okay, dude, hey, this is the wrong price." And he's like, "Huh?" And I'm like, "The price on here is $110 less than what you have. And I'm going to go somewhere with this. Listen." And he's looking at me so confused. And I'm like, "The price on the device is cheaper than the price you're charging me. Something's wrong." And he goes to the website. I go, "Check the website." And it's the correct price on the website. It's $374. And he's like, "Oh, I don't know what to do." And I was like, "Call a manager, do something." The manager goes, "We can't do this." Also a Haitian, woman or whatever. "We can't do this." And I'm looking at him and I go, "Look, man, pull something up. I want to see your guys' policy. We have economic policies here where you gotta offer me this at the payment price." He accidentally brings up his Coinbase wallet, types in his password. He has like $30 in there. It was crazy. So his password to his crypto wallet. Brings it up, and I looked at him and I go, "Why the hell am I?"
You would need his keys, not just the password to the wallet, though. But anyway, I know that's not neither here nor there. Where's the story going, though? Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly a newsflash that Walmart doesn't exactly hire the best and brightest.
Am I even trying to argue with this Haitian guy about a price on a sticker? This guy is trying to bring up a website and brought up his Coinbase wallet, gave me his password. This guy's got an IQ, not because he's Haitian, but he's got an IQ probably like 70. And I was thinking, I looked around for a second, and I go, "You know what? It is like 10:30 at night. The fact that it is crazy that I can get a PlayStation 5 at 10:30 at night on demand in the middle of life is quite a great benefit. But on the other hand, I look, things are falling apart in the store, and I go, "You know what? This place sucks." And who is this guy? I'm not even going to complain because what American with our standards would want to be working in this crappy place with the CFL lights, working for $12 an hour selling PlayStations? Nobody. So what do? They bring in clearly like a Haitian immigrant who barely speaks English to serve that goal. This is where the economy economy part, you know, it's a great economically, it's a great access for me. But in terms of degrading our standards as a culture, I thought about it for a second. I go, you know what's kind of crazy? There should be some sort of limitations on this where you can have the Walton family move in and bring in a Walmart, which then means I didn't go to Walmart out of choice. I went there because they've got out of all the competition. The only other competition for Walmart is other big box, large format, huge corporations. The only people that compete are there. So we've already taken out small business. We can get good quality service, good customer service. And then you come in there and you go, well, everything's cheap. So they must be very profitable. Everyone must be paid well. It must be a great experience. No, because there's no restrictions on the trade. The Walton family's extracting, I'm going to sound like a leftist to everyone here, but look, you know,
You already do.
I will say, yeah, it's fine. But I believe in nationalism. And
Hey, buddy, can you please work on your brevity a little bit? Holy shit, dude.
protectionism on our own economy in this way. Then you go in and you go, well, what's going on here? So they're taking billions, tens of billions of dollars out a year, maybe 100 billion, to import cheaper products that they're selling at a marked up price at a point to where there's nowhere else to buy it, in a living condition and standards to their employees that are only allowing a Haitian immigrant to be someone who could possibly think about taking that job while he lives with 6 people in his apartment. That to me is disgusting, and that's the problem with all of the free trade, is it's been taken advantage of. Massive billionaires have I don't know if we say the R word, but have RAP, you know, us and our economy. And I feel like, you know, for a lot of people that are capitalists or whatever the hell this is, you cannot have capitalism without a nationalist or a national protection-minded society. And that's what we don't have.
Nothing you just said is disgusting.
Let me address this. So, outside of the whole Walmart scenario, in 1950, it took approximately 4,637 hours of labor on average for the average American worker to own a home. As of 2024, it's 15,142. I don't think Gen Z is particularly buying the argument that they've been raised out of poverty, things have gotten better. I think Gen Z is actually livid over the conditions that they've been left by these policies.
Would you want to live in a 1950s home?
Yeah, why not?
Do you know the difference in the standards of what things
what is it?
like?
What are the standards?
You're not talking about the home. You're talking about the appliances.
Hold on. What standards? What are you talking about?
Well, yeah,
Well, the zoning, the housing standards are different. They're built different, Tim. They're different sizes. A home built today is over twice as large than a home from the 50s. And they're not as efficient either. I mean, technically.
I'm talking about the appliances. I'm talking about the kitchen in a 1950s
You're talking about government. You want government regulations on all of how the house should be built and all that stuff?
No, I'm saying.
Well, yeah, we have that, Tim. We do regulate how homes are built, Tim.
What's the problem with the 1950s home?
I'm saying
There's well, I mean, again, you say wrong, but we live in Florida here. The homes that are built in the 50s wouldn't be able to withstand a hurricane, for starters, Tim. I mean, that's one thing.
that the homes that people live in today are vastly superior in too many ways to count.
Like how?
Made out of cardboard instead of wood.
Come on. Honest question. Like how?
Think of all the kitchen.
Well, they are. I mean, why are you arguing this point, Tim? This is such a bizarre point. They clearly are built to a better fucking standard, Tim. I mean, and they're larger. They're physically larger.
Appliances.
Like what?
Think of the air conditioning, the stoves, the
You've had stoves in
microwaves.
Tim, can you shut the fuck up and let him fucking answer?
50s. They had microwave. They didn't have microwaves back then, but they had stoves. I'm not super concerned about a microwave.
The heating systems.
Like what? What is that? What is that heating system?
I'm not an expert in heating.
And why make the
systems.
argument?
Because it's true.
He doesn't need to be an expert in the thing to know that things are more efficient today, Tim. I fucking know that.
They had stoves, they had fridges, they had dishwashers back then.
Yeah, they weren't as efficient. Well, I don't know if they had dishwashers. They weren't as efficient as they are today, Tim, you fucking idiot.
So why don't you go to a museum where they have this set up, what the typical home was like in 1955, walk around and ask yourself if you'd rather live in that home than the home that you presumably live in or most Americans live in today. You might. I mean, that's up to you. I think 99%
You're asking,
of people
ask a
would not say so.
24-year-old, ask a 24-year-old, would you like to have your own home right now with a 1950s stove, a 1950s refrigerator, and a 1950s dishwasher, or would you like to live in a bachelor
Housing
apartment?
is, hold on.
This is a bad argument, though, Tim, because of course they would rather live in their own home. You really should have went with an argument of even when you adjust for inflation and you adjust for the size difference of the home, they're still not as affordable as they were back then. That's the thing that we need to mainly focus on. And instead, you kind of let him get away with a, well, the home is better today argument. And then you fought him on that point, which was not the point you should have fought him on, Tim. You're too stupid.
The whole framing is incorrect. Housing is not unaffordable today because of free trade. It's because governments across this country have made it impossible to build housing. That's why
That's a part of the problem, yeah.
we have a housing shortage and housing is so expensive. And in fact, the kind of protectionist policies you're talking about would make housing more expensive. You put tariffs on the imports that go into building homes, you're only making it even more expensive.
Why can't they make money?
Why can't who
Why
make
can't
money?
Gen Z make money?
There's a million reasons for that. Our government has screwed up our economy beyond
could
control.
maybe they can get a job like their parents and work at a steel mill, maybe. What do you think, Elijah? Can they get a job at a steel mill?
Well, wait, can we talk about...
you know what, that's, by the way, that's why Gen Z is both the laziest and hardest working, is because there are no traditional paths towards wealth. There's no like, hey, just get this job and then you will have a home. They have to be genius, and with that comes pioneering new avenues. And I'll tell you, I hire some Gen Z people. One of them carries his laptop around by the screen. It scares
Elijah, sorry, can we stay on...
But I'm saying he's a genius and he'll do well in life. But I'm going to say the current old paths that people had towards wealth do not exist, and we have to understand that's because of policies and choices and the movement of understanding.
It's not because of free trade.
But even if you want,
but can we stay on steel for a second? Can we stay on steel? I want to talk about steel. So a great example of this
let's go with metal.
is when I say that you guys oppose free trade, what you're really upset about is just inevitable progress. I mean, look, the invention of the automobile decimated the horse.
The progress is all the manufacturing in the United States goes to another country. That's progress in this guy's mind. It's like stupid. It's just a dumb point.
Strong buggy industry.
We used to build shit and now we buy shit from other countries. That's progress. Like, okay, it's not really progress, buddy.
Sure did.
Destroyed their jobs, destroyed their culture, destroyed their communities.
Not analogous to what we're talking about, but okay.
But it was social progress. You cannot put the genie back
Technological progress, not social progress, stupid.
in the bottle when it comes to trade. Steel is a great example. President Trump tried to in his first term. He put tariffs on steel imports from our allies and from other countries in order to try to increase domestic steel production. And it worked a little bit, right? You had a little bit of an increase in U.S. steel production, but actual, and research on this is overwhelming, actual employment in U.S. manufacturing overall suffered. Multiple times more jobs were destroyed than created because the cost went up in all the other industries that have steel as an input cost.
What?
So other manufacturing industries lost jobs, so steel could be protected a little bit. Massive more people lost jobs and lost income in all the industries that rely on steel as an input cost. It's a huge net negative to American society.
And there's a
but
phrase.
it protected some people who are well connected and favored.
The saying goes.
I don't think that those people were well connected. The steel industry was well connected to Trump. I don't know.
A society grows great when the original phrase was when men plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit beneath. And so what you're describing is what I call the heroin addiction economy, where it's let's continually gut and destroy the root of labor in this country for short-term gains in other areas. I don't care if a top-level company is going to decrease a little bit if it's going to restore the base and foundation of jobs in this country. So
you don't care about policies that destroy
I don't
hundreds of
care
thousands
about
of
the
jobs
fruits
on
of the
negative.
poisonous tree. And saying now that...
Well, I do.
Great. And that will lead to destruction of this country. So we ask ourselves why it is that young people can't find jobs. They're suffering, and it's because there used to be entry-level jobs that could help you afford to live and work in a certain place. But there's even beyond the quantifiable, because you say like this is progress. It's progress. Let's talk about the progress. Let's talk about the outsourcing of car manufacturing to Mexico, to Indonesia, and to China. And Donald Trump put a stop to that in his first term. And he said famously, as Michael Moore pointed out, he went to the executives and said, "I will put a 30% tariff on all of your cars, and no one will ever buy them again." And what happened? A multi-billion-dollar reinvestment in Michigan. And then Joe Biden got back in. And what happened? They left again, and the jobs were gutted. Michigan
Did Biden roll back Trump's tariffs?
some of them.
Most of them he kept in place.
Indeed.
He kept most of them in place. He expanded on some of them.
Them he kept in place.
And when the policies were reversed, or
Well, why did he do that, though? I would have asked that question if I was Tim. Like, why did he do that?
I should say the administration's enforcement of these policies, especially, we saw those investments lost. So Michigan is collapsing. There's so much more to this big picture. First of all, I really think we're getting too much trapped into the graph go up argument, which is the stupidest argument imaginable. It is good that on average people can buy more sticks of bubble gum and there's no more baseball at the park, there's no more apple pie, and there's no more Christmas. That's insane.
That's such a caricature of economic progress.
But the GDP
people who
issue is a
sorry,
problem.
for 1 second. To the people who have struggled to afford everything over the last couple of years, and for people on your side of the political spectrum have railed against that and how unaffordable life has been, you are now coming on and championing policies that would make things go up, and then dismissing the cost of living going up as, oh, bubblegum more expensive, graph go down. No, actually, for people who don't have, well, comfortable media jobs, like I think most of us do, it's actually a big deal when things get more expensive. When the price they pay at the store goes up. When the price at Walmart for the clothes they dress their kids. I grew up in Massachusetts and Rhode Island.
And
I mean, he's just basically ignoring the effect it would have on wages, though. I mean, because ideally wages would go up. And I mean, they're only talking about trade. Immigration is more important than trade, I think, for the sake of the argument fundamentally that they're having here. Because if you restricted immigration, that would bring up wages. It would also bring up prices marginally as well. I think that that's true. It does have an inflationary effect, but that's relatively small. Most people would rather have, at least most middle class people, most poorer people as well, would rather have higher wages. Even if it meant a slight increase in prices, they would still prefer to have higher wages. But this is what shitlibs do. They ignore the effect that it would have on wages and they just focus on prices. Now, to be fair, people on the other side do the opposite as well.
the point.
Greater Boston, and then Greater Providence before that.
And the principal issue at play is these short-term economic gains are destroying community and culture in this country, and it's resulting in, sure, maybe you can buy a PlayStation at 10 p.m. in a Walmart, but 10 years from now, people are going to be substantially worse off in many ways. Right. We're going to have lazy, gluttonous, dejected Gen Alpha, and we're already seeing this with the generations as you further progress, as it were. There's no unity. Kids don't go outside anymore. And
because of free trade? Because of technology.
Okay, no, but wait, it's a little bit deeper than that, because what this is, it's called the fake progress argument. And this is sort of the idea of looking at how do we value a society? What metric are we putting a value onto it? And I think it's kind of funny to me because people say, like Vivek, well, America is anybody. Kash Patel says, America is for everyone in the world. It's a world dream, he said. So in that case, everybody who doesn't live in America is currently an undocumented American. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's like, yeah, even if you live in Nigeria, you're just an undocumented American. That's not true. America is first and foremost a people. We can debate. This is not the debate right now to find out what that people is. Of course, legally, we've expanded that definition to include other races, to include, full rights to women to vote, et cetera. That has gone with our 15th Amendment. We have moved in that direction. So I'm not going to debate against our history. What I do bring up the fact is this. When we look at this GDP mindset, this idea that we are an economic zone, this is the mistake that they've made in Canada. This is the mistake they made in Australia. People know I've been living there. When you go into Melbourne, right, when you go into Sydney, it is no longer Australia. And what do I mean by that? It's no longer a European country. If I were to go into Chiang Mai and it was all just a bunch of Englishmen, that's all it was, obviously it wouldn't be Chiang Mai. It's the same reason why there's a lot of white people colonizing India. They got tired of it after a while. They wanted them to leave and they wanted them out. We kind of feel the same way in our countries. Why? Because we're realizing that just looking at our countries, like people are, a certain job. That job creates profit or benefit, and that benefit creates GDP. And then we get a new iPhone that has an action button on the side. That's worth gutting the entire Midwest culture of the United States, or giving my children no hope besides maybe OnlyFans if they're a girl, or becoming a podcaster. Tim, God forbid. God forbid our kids ever do that.
But this is just a non-reality. The idea that young women growing up today have no options other than OnlyFans.
I mean, it's an exaggeration, but he is right fundamentally about the point he's trying to make.
You need to touch grass.
No, I'm
too much time on Twitter.
No.
You need to touch grass. Oh my God, we found Reddit personified. Yeah.
No,
that's not an argument.
It's over. I said.
It's what he literally just said.
No.
I don't want my kids.
You saying touch grass isn't an actual argument to what he said.
Okay, how about
There's
this?
over a million American girls on OnlyFans. That's crazy. Yeah, there's over a million prostitutes.
That's not because they haven't first.
Listen, no, I'm saying because their best options right now.
I don't buy this argument. It's because they're taking the easy route in life, and rather than having to work for money, they actually do this dumb shit.
We created technology, and it's profitable, and we're basing off profit. On that regard, OnlyFans is a good option.
He's right.
OnlyFans is a good option. For the company.
Any young woman can go to college and become a nurse and instantly be employed. Can become a teacher and instantly be employed.
That's completely wrong.
This massively in demand.
It's not completely wrong, dude. Nurses basically are instantly employed. I don't know about teachers, maybe a little bit more work. You might have to move or something like that to another part of the country to get a job. But yeah, dude, nurses can basically just get a job anytime they want. That is true.
Absolutely.
What about H-1B-A?
No, hold on. We got to pause there.
It is absolutely.
Hey Tim, like, why even have the other guests on your show if you're just going to constantly fucking interrupt them, dude?
You're not getting out of college and just getting a job. That's not true.
If you have a useful degree,
if you have an education degree, maybe. If you have a nursing degree, definitely.
Absolutely. We have more jobs right now. We have 8 million job openings, and we have about 6 million unemployed people.
And they're not aligned with the degrees kids are getting.
Because they're getting gender studies degrees.
100%. He is correct about that. Brad, or whatever his name is, is correct about that.
Because
You just said nurse.
yes,
Yes, nurses can get a job very easily, Tim.
So around half of
what's
people
the
don't use their
unemployment rate for nurses?
You tell me. I don't know.
I don't know, but I promise you,
did
I'm
you bring it
willing
up
to bet
then?
you $500 right now. It's
Around
under 3%.
half of people don't use their
under
degrees in their
2%, maybe.
field.
Yes, because they have useless degrees.
Yeah, they have useless degrees, though, Tim. A lot of people have stupid degrees. It's not nurses that are having that problem, bro.
My point is that there's a path for anyone to succeed if they study something useful and in demand. There's
go
still a
up.
very real path.
Graph go up.
It's not graph go up.
It is.
It's a lifelong employment if you just make basic smart choices.
So let's talk about like
The problem is there are people who do make the smart choices that do still get screwed over. That's the point Tim should make. Again, he gets caught up on the nurse thing, which he's just objectively wrong about. Tim is so dumb. He can't debate. He's a terrible debater.
Right now, I was trying to reference Australia. Australia is a good example that we can look at if what you're saying is true, because Australia has less people than live in California, less people than live in Florida, in an entire country, the landmass of the United States. It's a pretty good example. With some of the most advanced cities in the world, it is a global player, and it's also part of the Five Eyes, right, of military intelligence. This is not a minor country. This is a serious player with multi-trillion-dollar GDP. Australia right now has taken the mindset that they are a global country, that they are an economic zone, that anybody can come. They've made a deal with Modi to bring in up to a million more Indians per year. They have a deal with China to bring in China if they have a certain amount of wealth in their bank. And what you're having right now is the most explosive, denigrating destruction of a country we will see in terms of, it is, besides Hong Kong, the second highest housing market in the country, because you're bringing in people that are artificially inflating the home prices. But you also have the socialist government, like you said, which I'll agree, that's restricting home building, to prevent environmental destruction. So you have this skewed, difference. So right now, I think it's like 8 to 10 times the average yearly salary is like an entry level home. I might be wrong, maybe 6, but 8 to 10 times last time I read of entry level salary with a 4-year degree just to be able to get an entry level 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house there. They live in smaller homes. On top of that, the competition there, like I have 3 friends there myself who have had to leave cities, move around, and one moved to Poland because they cannot compete with the Indians. It's not H-1B there. They cannot compete. They're trained at the University of Sydney, the best university there, and they cannot compete because they keep getting lower wages and agreeing to lower wages than they want. I've watched that culture get destroyed, and I'm seeing it at such a homogenous level across every major city: Melbourne, Sydney, Canberra. You got all the way up in Gold Coast. It's all being destroyed, and I look at that as an American, and I go, I see that here regionally in some places. I just don't want that for the whole country. And I know I'm not retarded. Sorry, I probably should say on YouTube. I know I'm not the R word because it looks like the whole country, or at least half the country's seeing what I'm seeing.
So it just feels like it feels like I'm talking to a woke person, because
That's fine.
all I'm hearing is my experience, my truth, my anecdotal evidence.
About the overarching trend of
everything
the
you just
entire
talked about.
nation.
For example,
It's not my experience.
Well, that would be an anecdote, his personal experience, but obviously it is happening, though, dude.
That's the actual
it's
factual
the
trend
vibes you've
of the
observed.
country.
Immigration doesn't lower
No,
wages.
this stuff is
It absolutely does lower wages. Is he sitting there denying that like corporations like Apple release these diversity reports every quarter where they basically are bragging about how few white people they hired? I mean, that is a real thing.
it's like this is
a documented
This is the liberal
phenomenon.
versus
I mean, you could argue that they're doing it in a roundabout way for, PR reasons, and it's ultimately because they're greedy and they expect that this is going to make more money when they pander to those demographics. Oh yeah, I mean, I don't find that surprising, but they are doing it nonetheless.
Conservative Party. This is their current debate. I spoke at CPAC Australia. This is being debated in their parliament. Like, this is not my experience. This is that's what you Paul Revere or whatever. You have Justin Trudeau. This is what's happening in Canada too. This is not my experience. These are countries are split on this issue. I was living there. I'm saying I follow the politics. I'm involved. I have family in the political system, in the intelligence community. This is the actual issue going on. This is not
Immigration
in a book.
Immigration does not lower wages,
It absolutely does.
except for one subgroup of Americans. Immigration
It particularly does it for people who are high school dropouts.
leads to an increase in jobs for domestic-born Americans,
Absolutely false.
an increase in wages for domestic-born Americans,
No, incorrect.
because it's not just an increase in labor. So just give me a moment. It's not just an increase in the supply
No one said it's only an increase in supply of labor. Yes, I understand that it does drive the economy to a certain extent.
of labor, because if all that changed, and this is kind of the talking point, was, oh, well, now we have more people competing for the jobs, of course then wages would go down. But also the demand for all the other goods and services around them in the community also goes up.
Yeah, yes. We've heard this before, but it's not a one-to-one relationship.
Total productive capacity of the nation and the economy goes up when you have more people.
Yeah, graph go up. To be fair, this is actually the time when you would say that, and it does make sense. The meme, the graph go up meme.
And work and produce. And what that means is higher wages and more jobs. I wish there's so much research into this.
And it means
for every immigrant that comes in and fills a job.
Baseball, it means no.
I don't know about you, but I can go and buy an apple pie for a few dollars.
Guys, the argument.
I don't know what you're talking
My wife
about.
makes me one.
That's
for a
exactly the
few
point I
dollars
was
today.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's dumb. Again, like, so we should flood our country with third world migrants so we can get cheap apple pies. Cool, bro. Great argument.
It's a really great example. Like, you don't know what I'm talking about. That's the point of your tweet when I said you don't know ish about this stuff. It's not singular culture. It's the fact that you cannot import massive amounts of people so graph go up and then.
I have seen this clip before and it made me laugh the last time, but I have to watch it again.
You cannot import massive amounts of people so graph go up.
The look on his face too. Oh my god, that shit is too fucking funny.
Graph go up. And
I mean, oh my god, that has to be the funniest fucking thing he's ever said, right? I mean, like, it's gotta be. I don't know why I find that so fucking funny.
then wonder why it is that your mall no longer has Christmas morning with Santa Claus and they're doing a holiday festival season instead. There are things that
Is that
we care about.
the worst thing in the world? That
And
there's
the things we
multiple
care about and
holidays
our moral
represented?
traditions are no longer represented in our communities. It is a bad
Christmas
thing.
is no
I
longer.
mean, the Christmas thing, I think, is a misnomer and a red herring. You know, that's an old Bill O'Reilly war on Christmas, dumb bullshit thing to distract people. I agree with that. That's dumb. That was something that was kind of stupid. But the overall trend in our country is that, yes, we are culturally shifting away from things that we did have traditionally. That is true. As the demographics of the country changes, I think things like Christmas will be less important to people. I think that that's true. Now, some of that is because it's a Christian religion and people are just less religious. So there is that. I think that Tim is overall correct about this, that the culture of the country will change as the demographics change, of course.
Longer represented in our community.
These things are on decline.
Not in Boca Raton.
I don't know where you live. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I drive down. Everyone's house is decked out for Christmas. Churches are packed and overflowing. I just feel like you guys live in a different reality than I do.
I live in a reality where
I promise you that church attendance has been on a decline in America for the last like 50 years. I can promise you that, dude. Churches are not overflowing.
I've watched numerous different subcultures be completely gutted and decimated and industries ripped to shreds by this graph go up mentality of neo-libs and libertarians.
It's creative destruction, and economic progressing does destroy
I do not
some
believe
jobs
the
and
world is made
industries.
better
You can't
by destroying
freeze the
moral
economy
traditions
in place.
just because you want graph go up.
Skateboarding production is not a moral tradition.
A cultural tradition that we have in this country come from all sorts of community gatherings and communications. And for instance, the founding fathers met in bars and pubs to create this idea of self-governance or to expand upon it. And what we have now are people who are completely dejected, don't meet once a week. There's no culture. There's an increase in crime and the mechanization of the state. What I see from libertarians in this graph go up argument is, but the economy is good. What's the problem? Well, I don't know. In Dearborn, Michigan, there's a bunch of female genital mutilation. That's probably not a good thing. Just bringing people in for the sake of graph go up does not make your country better.
Well, hang on for a moment.
You're both making two different arguments, and the real situation is there is a balance between the two, because Tim is talking about what the important thing from his perspective is that the society and the culture take precedence over the economy, right? The economy lives to serve the society and the culture, because the society and the culture are the people. So the reason that you worry about economic, graph go up, or however you want to phrase it, the reason you worry about those things is because that is in service to the people. The argument that you're making, Brad, sounds like the people are in service to the economy, and you can't.
No, it's that the economy is inextricable from people's well-being.
It's not. I understand that, but the point that I'm making here is there is a balance argument here that actually needs to be argued, and both of you are arguing to a different thing. So you're arguing that the economy is the most important most important aspect.
And when voters go to the polls, it's their top issue.
Hold on. I understand that, but Tim is arguing that part of the reason why we see a decline in overall feelings of satisfaction in life, why we see people that have a higher rate of depression in our society, why we see all these negative results in people's lives, is because we're focusing only on things like economic prosperity, and we're not focusing on having more kids, which is another symptom of the problem that Tim is addressing. You're not addressing the problem that Tim is, and Tim is. I mean, maybe Tim doesn't understand.
No. This is literally the argument. The argument is literally that graph go up is short-sighted and stupid and leads to civilization collapse. A paraplegic 1 year after their accident and a lottery winner 1 year after winning register the same levels of happiness. Yes. The talking about people are not in poverty today. It's nebulous in that poverty will always exist because poverty is relative to the wealth of a nation. What we're talking about is
different measures. There's absolute measures of poverty as well.
And there are people that care about their traditions, their moral frameworks, and the idea of we're going to take the manufacturing from Michigan and send it to Mexico. It's a good thing because overall the numbers go up. Tell that to the families in Michigan who are forced to flee as the state collapses because the hard fixed costs of infrastructure don't change and the jobs are gone. Meaning for the average person, their share of taxes and services they have to pay for increases as people leave and there are no jobs.
Do you think the state of Michigan has collapsed?
Do you know what's going on in Michigan?
Oh my God, dude. It's clearly a fucking shell of its former self, dude.
I live in Michigan.
Do you know what's going on in Michigan?
Yes.
As people, it is suffering the biggest net out migration. And what's happening, how do you get the Flint, Michigan crisis? What happened in
terrible local government.
Yeah, what happened in Flint, Michigan was that
that's not the only thing, dude.
The hard cost to run a water infrastructure is the same no matter how many people live there up to a certain point. So when Detroit has, let's just use hypothetical numbers, 1 million people, and it costs $1 million per month to run that, everyone spends $1 and nobody cares. When the jobs were gutted from the state and the state started experiencing a mass net out migration, the share per person for the cost of water increased dramatically to the point where this area had the highest water costs in the country because there were no jobs. Why? The jobs went to Mexico. Free trade, amazing, isn't it? So what Flint, Michigan did was they said, our people are in poverty and can't afford the high cost of water from the Detroit infrastructure. Why don't we use the Flint River? And then you end up with Legionnaire's disease and this crisis where people are now suffering and dying and getting sick because they couldn't afford the massive infrastructure as the economy collapsed. Thank you, free trade, but don't worry, the graph went up.
It's not about free trade. It's about the decisions the local government made at every step of that process.
Not being able to afford water from Detroit because the auto manufacturing was gone?
Much poorer places than Flint, Michigan managed to not poison their own citizens with water. I mean, if
they didn't know that their water was bad, and they got off the expensive water from Detroit because they couldn't afford the infrastructure anymore.
And they didn't want to.
They didn't have the tax base.
Yeah, I don't think it was just mismanagement, dude. I think it was about how poor the area is, and at least in part.
They didn't have the tax base because the jobs are gone and people are fleeing Michigan. If you need 1 million people to sustain a system and half of them jump ship, the cost double for everybody.
But I feel like we're kind of talking past each other because no one has ever said that free trade doesn't have consequences, that doesn't have downsides, that there aren't winners and losers.
And so what we're talking about here is
some people are left behind by economic progress.
The utilitarian argument versus the intellectual argument.
That doesn't mean you try to freeze society in time.
You're saying the word progress over and over again because you're making an emotional play as something we should be doing, but it's not. Progress is a vague term that has no relevance here. We're talking about policy choices. It is not progress to hire slave labor in China. That is a policy opinion.
Obviously, slave labor is not progress. That's not most free trade is not slave labor.
We have to define. Canada isn't really our ally. They have a $1.2 trillion trade deficit. They're taking advantage of us. They're using us as a surrogate state. We can't really have free trade with Canada.
Well, with them doesn't mean they're taking advantage of us.
Oh, they're taking advantage.
I have a trade deficit with my grocery store. They're not taking advantage.
No. That is a buying and selling. That is a transaction. They're not. Their government itself is putting it up so that they are keeping their domestic production at their priority, while then making sure that they're able to sell a lot of their exports to us.
Which benefits us enormously.
No. Some, but not all. I'm saying this idea of free trade, we are being abused in the United States, hands down, okay? Hands down. We are being, again, the R word.
How does it benefit us?
That's what I want to know.
Lower prices is what he's going to say.
Why does it benefit having a 1.2?
But again, gets into the same exact argument. I'm just repeating myself. Like, yes, the prices are lower, but the wages are also lower, which is not good for people who are living at that level.
$2 trillion trade deficit with Canada, considering the fact their economy is only a few $1 trillion. Like they're getting like 20-30% of their entire, revenue.
How does
just
this
from
trade with Canada benefit us?
Because so many things that we buy and sell and rely on, you think of lumber coming from Canada, you think of all the other imports that come into everything from housing to road construction to apparel to foods. All these things come in from Canada because they're able to be produced more affordably there, and then Americans enjoy those goods and services at lower prices.
What would happen
than they would
if Canada? What would happen if Canada just said like, "Hey, we're cutting off access to the oil and the lumber"?
Both countries would suffer.
So how would we suffer?
Free trade benefits both countries.
How would the U.S. suffer from that?
We would have to get it from somewhere that's more expensive or less efficient.
So let's say
Not less efficient. The prices would go up is the fucking answer. It's obvious what the answer is.
I don't know, like a war broke out and then like trade just shuttered and there's no shipping lanes because they're under attack. What would the U.S. do to like, I don't know, build houses and roads and get fuel?
A war broke out between the U.S. and Canada?
No, in general, shutting down trade lines because cargo ships are shut down.
From the U.S. to Canada, the cargo ships, we'd lose control
I'm
of.
giving you a hypothetical to say, how would the U.S. survive not being able to produce these things?
It'd be terrible. It would have economic devastation for Americans.
Should the U.S. then not have a robust culture of self-reliance and the ability to produce these things at home?
Should we just be completely kind of produce everything ourselves, no matter how inefficient and costly it is?
Why is it inefficient?
We should try to afford.
Why is it inefficient? That's
because the whole reason it's being done somewhere else is because it can be done more efficiently there.
No, that's not
That is
true.
literally
It's not efficiently. It's done cheaper there because labor costs are lower there.
the reason. If they could make it cheaper and more efficiently here, they would, because it costs money
Inefficient
to
is an
ship
argument.
things.
You need to explain. You see, inefficient, these are buzzwords that don't actually
No,
describe
it has a literal technical economic meaning.
Define it.
The reason that
Define
the reason that something is being brought in or purchased from overseas is because it can be made more affordably there. If they could,
It's cheaper. It's cheaper. You said all these words. All you had to do was say the thing is cheaper.
no, it's not. In economics, that's literally the same thing.
So slave labor is more efficient in China.
Slave labor is immoral.
Hell yeah.
So,
But we buy it. That's what free trade gets us. We get
China is a different situation than
Bangladesh,
most of our
Indonesia,
free trade.
insert Southeast Asian country that they're working for pennies on the dollar.
That is not the same thing as slave labor. Low wages and slaves are very different.
Yeah, hold on. Tell the Foxconn employees who are marching off the rooftop in mass suicide they weren't slaves.
Well, they weren't slaves, Tim. You're stupid. Goddamn, Tim is so dumb.
Where?
In Foxconn in China, they put catching nets because they were in mass lining up and walking off to commit mass suicide. Tell me that's not
terrible.
slave.
I don't know. I don't know
that's
about
free
it.
trade.
Yeah, it's an old story. That's like a fucking 15-year-old story. I think that should happen before I even went to college.
Because we have no regulations over there, and Apple and these other computer manufacturers says we don't care if the employees are 16 people jammed in a 10-by-10 room to the point they can't quit. So they go up on top of the building, line up, and just walk off to die.
So
that's
then
free trade.
we should restrict trade with slave labor, but not
That's not slave labor, though.
make everything in America.
So you're saying that we should do trade with those who have the same moral values as us?
Well, not the same moral values.
Close
as
enough,
us,
close
but
enough.
there should obviously. I don't think
That's not
anybody.
free trade.
I think that's actually a fair thing to say. I mean, yeah, the same moral values or close enough. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, more or less. In the very least, awareness should be made to the consumer.
Trade.
When we talk about free trade versus protectionism, it's a spectrum. And even the most diehard economists who advocate for free trade have always acknowledged there are certain narrow sub-exceptions where some protection can be appropriate.
So the things that I am upset about right now, you agree are actually bad.
Well, I don't think I agree about the scope of some of the things you're saying, no.
Like people in
or
China
that free
working
trade is
for-
all bad. Obviously, I think slave labor is bad.
You think it is
yes.
efficient that
Many things can be made elsewhere in the world much more efficiently than in America.
It's not efficiently. It's made cheaper because the labor is less expensive for the business, for the factory.
efficient to have a low-skilled, low-wage worker in a foreign country do the job instead of an American.
Yes.
And so what happens in 10 years when the industry no longer exists in America?
You don't need it. Not every industry has to exist in America.
So what happened during COVID when we didn't have vitamin C or PPE?
Well, that's the problem with allowing global supply chains to be shut down. Governments across the world shut down supply chains and economies. That was the
that
problem.
will happen.
It shouldn't happen.
But we live
But
in a
also, these things might just happen even without a pandemic. They might happen with a war. They might happen with a trade war even. You know, they might happen. I mean, a lot of things could cause these things. I think Tim's point is that we should be more self-sufficient, which is a fair point.
world. Sometimes you got to lock your door.
So let me ask you. Let me ask you
Sometimes you can't go to the grocery store.
Why?
Should we have emergency food at our houses? The answer is yes, because sometimes the road is there's a road impasse.
It's extremely important because part of the identity of our country is that we're a global economic superpower, that we're one of the wealthiest nations, the wealthiest large and advanced nation in the globe, and we've gotten there in part because of free trade. But let's talk about what you just said, because I think all of these issues, trade, immigration, culture, I will say this, culture is the strongest argument against free trade. There are no good economic arguments against free trade. There are some narrow national security arguments against free trade in certain areas. And then there is a cultural problem when it comes to free immigration. I'm sorry, more so than free trade. But the reason that you mentioned Dearborn, Michigan, which I want to go back to, Tim, that's a problem with a specific culture, frankly, Islamic cultures, that I don't think we should have more mass Muslim immigration into the United States. But I do think we should have far more hardworking, industrious people from India, from South America.
No, not based. Not based.
Who want to come here and work hard and contribute and love America.
This is a pressure system where
he's basically like he's basically like towel head bad, turban head good. Is that basically what he's saying?
Bringing in people with very different cultural values, and that's going to fundamentally alter the unquantifiable things of this country that we want to pass on to the next generations.
Unless they assimilate. And a lot of these immigration groups do assimilate very well.
Dude, show me where Indians are not living around each other and celebrating Diwali. And I'm from Frisco, Texas. That was terrible.
The idea that the United States does anything to encourage assimilation in 2025 is absolutely ridiculous.
By the second or third generation, immigrants absolutely assimilate in America.
They don't assimilate to become American by the second or third generation, but there are policies that the United States could have that would encourage assimilation, but the United States chooses not to have those policies. The idea that the United States encourages assimilation, that is fallacious nowadays. The United States does not encourage assimilation. I do think that there are things the government could do. One of them would be simply just having the United States say, look, in America we speak English, and the government doesn't use any forms that are in any other language aside from English. Because if you don't have a common language, you certainly aren't going to be able to have a common ideology. I do think that the race is less important than the ideology. If you want to go ahead and say you come from a communist country and you're not a communist, come on in. But if you are a communist, we should say, no, you can't come into the United States. If you have an ideology that is at odds with the United States, we should absolutely kick people or reject people based on that.
Bro, like, how in the world is that the discussion that needs to be had in the world today? You mean if people are coming from North Korea? Like, dude.
Should we suspend trade with any country that has something like this happen? 150 Chinese workers at Foxconn threatened to commit suicide by leaping from the factory in protest of their working conditions. Foxconn installs anti-jumping nets.
It was 15 years old. That's funny. I nailed it. I fucking nailed it. I was like, I think that story is like 15 years old, Tim.
Here's a photo of the anti-suicide nets.
Which, by the way, what is the suicide rate in America compared to China, Tim? I mean, I would assume it's higher in China, and maybe it is, but I doubt it's higher by much.
Is this okay for free trade? I mean, graph go up.
I remember this happened.
Hang on. Let me answer this question. So you just showed one terrible story from a country with billions of people and asked me if we should shut down trade with a whole country based on one anecdotal story from 2010 about one company in horrific conditions. By that logic,
sorry. I'm going to talk over you if you try to reframe the argument. I said, from this story, should we have shut down trade with China over, at this time, this specific incident occurring?
The whole country.
No, Tim, that would be silly.
Yes.
Over one
It's
company.
a simple yes.
No, if anything, we should shut it down just because it's not in our interests. And we should produce the shit here in the United States that we need, rather than producing it in these third world countries, which essentially, in a roundabout way, undercut American labor.
Sir, no question.
No, we shouldn't.
Okay, so I believe that there is once again, we are now at the utilitarian versus the deontological ideological, moral philosophy
Bro, stop trying to over-intellectualize this, Tim. You're not that fucking smart.
I think we as a country, if we are looking at another country driving people to mass suicide in any degree, we have to stop and say, you are putting our entire trade agreements at risk because of those squalor conditions you have put these people in that's resulting in mass suicide. If but one person is living as a slave, I have a problem with that and don't see why graph go up, why we should make money in any way off of a foreign country that is doing something like this.
So what?
You just have a dumb take on it, Tim. That's just it at the end of the day. If you were making an argument about like blood diamonds and like child labor in Africa where they literally were slaves and they were literally beaten and all that in order to find the diamonds and like there's all this horrible shit that was going on, you'd have a point. But a story from 15 years ago about some people threatening to commit suicide that didn't even commit suicide, you know, is not really, that ain't it, Tim. That just ain't it.
One person living as a slave in a country of billions of people, what you just said, we should write off trade with the whole country.
It's really simple, actually. When Donald Trump calls him on the phone and says, you will right now get that man freed and declare it. Otherwise, we'll put a 30% tariff on all your goods. Guess what that country does? It frees that slave. You are
I
saying
don't know who you're talking about, Tim. A slave?
you accept a certain degree of mass suicide so that your graph go up.
That is not what I'm saying.
I mean, I think that's silly, dude. I mean, unfortunately, this is just stupid. We don't need to go into this emotional argument about, oh my God, the poor Chinese worker that hates their job and has to work in a sweatshop. Yeah, Tim, before there were fucking sweatshops, these people were working in like rice paddies in the sweltering heat outside all day. This is stupid. This is a really dumb point.
So you think we should
maybe we should sanction trade with Foxconn. Maybe we should restrict trade in that industry. Maybe that specific region of China you should spend. It's horrible. It's evil. China's evil. I don't know what you're trying to make me say about.
We should not do trade
with anything with China. Okay, you explain that to Americans when every single thing they rely on and buy gets more expensive after years of inflation under Biden.
I will.
You come in, MAGA comes in and says, all right, you know what? You guys elected us because everything's so unaffordable. Fuck it.
I will stand on top of a mountain. I will stand on top of a mountain and say, and directly into the eyes, I will do it right now. To every voter, I will look into the eyes of every voter right now and say, Brad is evil and accepts human sacrifice so that you can have a cheap iPhone. And if you're willing to buy a cheap iPhone,
I mean, human sacrifice, dude. Again, this is just really silly. I don't know what to say other than that.
Knowing that people are committing mass suicide, you stand along with them.
So I'm
and I will
evil
stand on the
because
other
I
side.
disagree with you about trade policy.
It's just dumb. I mean, it's just a dumb emotional argument. It's just stupid. I mean, like I said before, if we're talking about the blood diamond thing, I get that. But if we're talking about people in third world countries that just have shitty jobs, I don't get that. That's not the same thing. A lot of people in the world have shitty jobs that they don't like. I have a shitty job that I don't like. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. I mean, some people who are threatening to commit suicide because they hate their jobs, so, you know, in China 15 years ago, I just don't really think that that's all that interesting.
Because you think there's an acceptable degree of mass suicide in concentration camps so that your economy can improve.
I don't think that. You're shadow boxing with a caricature.
Should we threaten to sever trade with China over the Uyghur concentration camps, the forced abortions of the Uyghur Muslim Chinese? Or should we just say, well, you know, we're doing business with them?
The world is a terrible place. If we were going to cut off trade with every country that's violating human rights in different ways, we couldn't trade with many countries, and most countries couldn't trade with us.
That's right. So if they want the American dream, and if they want our business, they better stop raping Uyghur Muslim women and then force them to get abortions.
You think the whole world's going to conform to an upstanding moral citizenship that
maybe
we
not
put on them? Because
I don't know. I can see clearly that you have no moral standards.
I do have moral standards.
Yeah, that a certain amount of rape of Uyghur Muslims and forced abortion is acceptable so that our economy can trade.
No, I don't think that's acceptable.
And why aren't we putting pressure on China to stop it?
Are we going to put pressure on every country that does something wrong?
Does China do business with us?
Cut off our economy.
Does China buy from us?
We also buy from them.
Does China buy from us, yes or no?
Yes.
And so they need things from us, right? And so we have leverage in a negotiation to say, stop. They are raping Uyghur Muslim women in China and then forcing them to get abortions. That is currently going on.
It's terrible. It's evil.
Absolutely. So how about Donald Trump says, if we find out that you continued this process, we are going to put a 30% tariff on all goods and stop selling to you.
And what happens when they don't stop?
Then we shut down trade because
we make Americans impoverished to
You know what?
protest their morality.
You know what? You're right. I guess it's okay that they're being raped because some people get cheap goods.
Honestly, if I didn't get an
Yeah, it's not really the best argument to make. It's like, I guess it's okay if atrocities happen just so we can have cheap shit. I don't really think that that's like really the best argument to make, dude. The problem is, regardless of whether we sever trade or not, they would just continue doing it anyway. So why not do something that benefits our own country would be, I think, the argument that should be made here. It's not really like the best argument to just be like, what are you going to do? Which is essentially what he's saying.